Hello, 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 and welcome back to Conversations with JR. It's always a pleasure to sit down and have great conversations with you, and I hope all is well. Well, today's topic, I'm focusing on the ladies today. Not that I like to leave my gentlemen out, but I like to focus on the ladies today. I've been thinking lately. I've been looking at a lot of postings on Facebook and other social media and, in Hollywood because I follow these social media outlets in order to get topics to talk about. And I've been noticing a trend lately. Now, don't get me wrong, to each his own. But I've been noticing a trend lately with African American women. And they're exposing themselves a lot more lately. And when I say exposing myself, it's like the necklines are getting lower. They're exposing more breasts. They're exposing more buttocks. The gowns that they're wearing, there's less and less and less to the gowns, And I had a conversation with a couple of young ladies, of different ages and different backgrounds. And a lot of women feel that women should be able to wear whatever it is that they feel comfortable in without people making negative comments about what they're wearing. Now, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But when does it come to being fashion versus overexposure, too much, to just being downright distasteful and vulgar? That's what I'm looking at. As a woman, if I've always dressed on a modest, I've always been modest in my dressing. And that's just my taste because I come from a background of women, Southern women, and we've always been very modest in our taste of dressing. But modesty doesn't mean that you cannot be sexy, that you cannot be glamorous. And to me, sexy is a state of mind, but it doesn't mean that you cannot be glamorous. It doesn't mean that you cannot use your imagination, when it comes down to dressing. But I am just looking at all of the social media and how it influencing our young ladies out here today, to dress and to expose themselves and to overexpose themselves. Now, the myth is that, this is beauty and the way women are dressing and exposing themselves and, in these provocative, costumes, because I don't call them gowns, I call them costumes, is that this is what men, they want to put it on the men and say, this is what the men want to see, and this is what the men like to look at, so they're contributing, these females are contributing to, this idealized woman and the male gaze and all that kind of things. But I'm wondering how much of this is really going too much and too far. And what my concern is the negative effects that this is having on our generation of young women coming up. They are up against so much in today's society, with all bombarded with the social media, the images on social media, Facebook, this reality TV, and, Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion and all these other women who are coming out. Not so much with this glamour, but this over the top. I see the young ladies in the nail shops and their nails are getting longer and longer and the lashes are getting longer and longer and the makeup is getting heavier and heavier and the weaves are getting longer and more outrageous. Again, there is nothing wrong with self-expression. I go get my nails done. I went from wearing locks for about 30 something years to wearing braids, loved my braids. And now I decided to just cut my hair and a real close cropped, style that's befitting me, because that's what I feel comfortable with. I do change my hair color every now and then. But to me, it's like the young ladies are trying to keep up with these trends and keep up with these images and, keep up with all of what's going on around them. And I want to know, how much is that affecting them emotionally, psychologically? How do they really feel about themselves when they put themselves out there like this? To look a certain way. Again, I'm not trying to body shame anyone. I'm not trying to bash anyone. I'm not here to bring anyone down. Conversations with JR is all about having a conversation about things in society that impact our lives. And sometimes they impact our lives negatively. We have all these young women running around in our community, barely clothes, naked, cheeks hanging out of their shorts, breasts falling all out of their shirts. Come on. There's predators in our neighborhoods. No one is addressing that. But yet, they should be allowed to wear whatever it is that they want. We're the parents. Where are the parents? Where is the guidance in the home? Where is that village for these young women who are going out here, walking around in the communities, overexposing themselves? I know a lot of people are okay with, and let me just speak about the larger size woman. I'm sorry, I'm going to call them plus size woman, because that's what the language my mom always used. Listen, I have plus size women in my family. My mom has always been a plus size woman. My sister's a plus size woman. I'm around plus size women every day who dress, glorious. They wear things that accentuate their curves, but it's not tight. It's not tacky, and nowadays it's like anything goes. Anything goes. Let the rolls, 3 stomachs hang out, let all the short pants, let all the, the ripples in your thighs hang out and things like that. It's freedom of expression. People need to be free. People need to be free. But my question is it really freedom? I'm not trying to body shame anyone. Plus size women have every right to feel needed, wanted, and loved. And they, feel sexy and feel glorious and feel glamorous. But if you look at some of the women who are plus size women, squeezing themselves into these teeny pieces of clothes and overexposing themselves, what have we come to as a society when we applaud, congratulate, elevate these images for our young women in society to follow? I often go shopping, various different places, and I'm finding it harder and harder, more difficult now to find, clothing that are of the modest stature. Everything is tight, flimsy, thin, short. Everybody doesn't have the same build. Everybody doesn't want to wear the same kind of colors. Every woman out there is not out there to expose herself to the world. And then it's in a lot of these young women thinking that the more they expose themselves, the better chances of getting a man, getting a good man, by going out there and overly exposing themselves. The only thing that's happening is that they have these predators And I'm saying it. We have predators in our families. We have them in our neighborhoods. We have them everywhere. We have them in the churches, in the schools. But no one wants to address this. I'm not blaming women that because they wear a certain style of clothing, because they expose themselves, that they are drawing attention to themselves and, something negative should happen to them. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But is anybody really paying attention and trying to think about the influence that this is having on our young women in our communities? They spend every waking moment of the day spending their money on name brand clothing instead of saving their money, instead of people talking to them about their future. They spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money to create this image. And that's all that they are creating. They are creating this image. But at the end of the day, what is creating that image doing for them? What is it really doing for them? They got to buy more and more wigs, more and more weaves. The nails are getting more and more longer, more expensive. Like, again, the makeup. I see beautiful women covering themselves with tons and tons and tons of makeup. Now, there's nothing wrong with wearing makeup. I wear it. And I wish I knew some of the tricks of the trade that these young women know, to cover up the dark spots and to even out, and all those other kind of things. But to me, it's like they're wearing this makeup to cover up who they are and the beauty that they were giving. It's like, like wearing natural hair, wearing short hair, wearing your own hair. It's like taboo. It's more into the European look. That's what it is. And another thing, this is the last thing, and I'm going to get off. I'm really going to get off. And I hope that, this has meaning for some people. Again, women are walking around trying to get bigger and bigger bottoms. Their access, and the bigger butts, bigger bottoms, bigger asses. I said it. And they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're going for surgery. They're cutting themselves. They're distorting themselves. They're going to these different countries and adding and taking away. Why? Have we gotten to the point in society that we continue to tell women that they are not good enough for what they were born with, for what they were given? I see some women with such large rear ends, and we know it's fake. They are following what's going on in the social media. Women are dying under the knives, doing operation, doing surgical procedures. Women are getting disfigured, developing health problems, breast implants, getting ribs taken out of their sides. The Brazilian butt lift, everybody knows that's very dangerous. Getting fake butt implants and hip implants and, perking up your nose and, your cheekbones. What are we saying? What are we doing as a society? But everybody applauds this and think that it's beautiful. And they keep going and going. This is just my voice. This is my opinion. I just like to sit down and have conversations about topics that I think that, other people are not having conversations about. And I'm very much concerned about, I'm just one voice. But I'm hoping that there are more voices out there. I'm just really concerned about, our young women, our black sisters, our Latino sisters, our sisters of color. I'm concerned about them, the younger ones in the neighborhoods and in our communities. I'm really concerned about their future, their life, their emotional stability, psychologically, I'm really concerned about that. So that's my take on this topic here. I just want to ask a question and sign off with a question that when does so much of this imagery and this overexposure, when is this too much? To me, it just goes to the vulgar and the outlandish. And the more and more, outlandish you can be, the better off you are. And it seems like the more society supports this way of being dysfunctional. I see a hurting society of women. That's what I see. I see a hurting society of women who are being put on display, who might think that they have to compete. They might have to do these things in order to be accepted in a certain class, and a certain status, and a certain economic level. That they have to do these things in order to be accepted. And that's not true. And we all know that that's not true. There have been some beautiful women in the black culture who've never resorted to any of these things. And they were just naturally beautiful women. This is Conversations with JR. Conversations with JR. You can find me on all social medias. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Conversations with JR, where I have many, many more videos about different topics with young ladies, my concern about women, also my concern about brothers. Join me on Facebook. Join me in conversation. And if you have a topic that you would like to talk about and come on my podcast, reach out to me, Conversations with JR. Thank you. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And moving forward, I'm hoping that women will be able to stand up, look at their self in the mirror, stop looking at themselves as body parts, and love themselves as they are and embrace themselves. Because, ladies, you are beautiful just as you are. Thank you for listening.